Yeah, cooler than a polar bear's toenails. It is the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works. It is Noah Levick, the smartest man in the room, Danny Pommells, and our producer extraordinaire, Ben Barry, who, in honor of Michael Rubin's 51st birthday, will also be posting a shirtless selfie on his Instagram page. So be sure to wait a minute. I'm told that's just a regular Ben Barry post. So there will be a shirtless selfie, but it's not connected to Michael Rubin. So there's that. But so glad you could join us. Glad you could be here. I got Noah laughing, so that's a good start to the podcast. Ben Barry did have an idea that we want to throw out there of how many number one picks have won a championship with the team that drafted them. So if you got that, if you feel like you can figure that out without Googling and searching during the podcast, we'll bring you the answer here at the very end. But always good to be with you, Noah. Hardworking and always on top of the beat. A lot of things to get to. Some different sides of Joel Embiid. Rumors surrounding his maybe time with the Sixers possibly coming to an end if the Knicks have their way, as well as some players criticizing his performance, as well as a marquee moment for him over the weekend as he and Anna DePaula got hitched, right? So a little who's who once again. He had the white James Bond, with the sport coat and the black slacks look going on. Looked pretty fresh to me. And he looked happy, which is most of all. Arthur was there, his son, and it just was a great family atmosphere. And I'm sure you can pay for a pretty good wedding with his salary.
It looked like, everything was as pristine as it could possibly be.
Right.
And you could do a little Where's Waldo if you were trying to pick out, your favorite player in the NBA. That's not Joel Embiid. Jaden Springer had a noticeable, red suit. I also saw Joakim Noah, Chandler Parsons in some of the videos. So a lot of who's who in the NBA there to celebrate the MVP of the league, who has, made his family in Philadelphia and had a really joyous occasion over the weekend. Yeah,
it seemed that James Harden wasn't there though, based on just social media sleuths who kind of put two and two together, which is a little strange considering how chummy they seemed at Michael Rubin's white party. And this is journalism, folks. This is what journalism is nowadays, connecting these dots. So he was not at Joel Embiid's wedding. Maybe there were some guests there he didn't want to see. Maybe he just wasn't invited. Who knows? But did you make note of that, or was that interesting to you at all?
Wedding attendees are what they are. I'm not going to really do much scrutiny in that regard. So I think that's Joel Embiid's life. That's James Harden's life outside of the court. And I think certainly on the record lately, Joel Embiid has, indicated that him and Harden have a relationship that he feels is going to last beyond their playing careers. And that's a cool thing. But as far as the wedding attendance, obviously there is much that we do not know. And it seems like Joel Embiid had a swell time and his family did. And those are obviously the most important things on a huge day in your life. So, yeah.
We are in the midst of this James Harden trade request, so that may or may not play into how all that plays out, but we'll move on and discuss some more speculative things, maybe not necessarily outside of basketball with dealing with matters on the court. But there has been this constant, groundswell as we touch on it of the Knicks' desire to maybe have Joel Embiid in the fold. And one of the things that lends credence to that is the bevy of picks that they have, the amount of draft capital period that they would be able to send the Sixers' way. There have been numerous people that we talked about prior to the podcast who have given life to this, from The Athletic, from Sports Illustrated. Most recently, Keith Pompey was on Sirius XM talking about the fact that the Sixers and the Knicks don't have anything in the works. There's no impending discussion, but if Joel Embiid, and of course Joel's comments of wanting to win a championship Philly or elsewhere lends a little bit of credence to that if you want to connect the dots there. But the fact that the Knicks are always in the market for a star, someone who can, bolster their team into the, frontline NBA discussion, winning wise and selling tickets wise, and the capital that the Sixers have as well, and the fact that the Knicks might want to star and James Harden wants out. There's maybe a connection there that could be made as far as maybe Tobias Harris bolstering some type of trade that, makes sense there. But is it worth Sixers fans spending their time trying to dissect that, or even, poo-poo it, just try to make it, let everybody know that it doesn't make sense, and why would they trade him within the division or things like that? Where are you at on that? And do you feel like it's even worth Sixers fans' time to entertain something like that?
Probably not for now. I think it's jot it down on your notepad for potential future reference if things go poorly for the Sixers and Joel Embiid is unhappy at a later date. But certainly does not seem like anything along the lines of Joel Embiid being shockingly shipped to the Knicks is happening anytime soon. I think, though, sure, it's legitimate that the Knicks like what Joel Embiid brings to the table. I think he could pair well next to their current best player, Jalen Brunson, and always have an eye toward how do we land that next big fish. And Joel Embiid, of course, is the epitome of that. And Leon Rose, who runs the Knicks, is Joel Embiid's former agent. And, they parted on good terms. And, of course, that relationship is another reason to feel that if there were to be a Joel Embiid sweepstakes, the Knicks would be a logical name to include in that. I think that's totally fair. But I don't think any such sweepstakes is remotely imminent or something worth having on the radar. I think we might return to this discussion and, very, very far down the line, but I really would be quite surprised if we're discussing this in more urgent terms anytime soon. And yeah, hypothetically, I think you probably put the Knicks in those, doomsday, Joel Embiid is on the trade block scenarios. And then, the Miami Heat would be another logical name. Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, the notion of those two on the court together, they've been a little, wink, wink about desiring that again. And sure, if Joel Embiid were to want out of Philadelphia and to be, furious about the state of affairs here and feel elsewhere is truly what's best for him, then yeah, Miami Heat, New York Knicks, they would be on that list. And I think nowadays we see stars have a lot of power in these sort of things. That doesn't mean they get their way 100% of the time, but pretty significant. And I think it's not impossible to imagine a scenario in which the Sixers really crater, and those are, one of the two teams that Joel Embiid ends up on. But yeah, I think the broad takeaway is, for me, like, discussing it as a thing that is at all feasible anytime soon, that just doesn't feel like, the right way to have this discussion, based on what we know right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Noah. And the reason fans shouldn't have it on their radar are the reasons you outlined, as well as why would they make this type of trade in the division? They have to deal with him, season after season on a regular, although all the teams are playing each other now, but nonetheless, he's 2 hours away or an hour and a half away. That's pretty close to home. And Daryl Morris comments on 97.5 The Fanatic, specifically stating that we're in the business of competing for championships. We're not making the Harden trade if it's not going to keep us in that short list of people who are viably competing for a title. So, restructuring the roster and trading Joel Embiid away for future draft picks, whether they be number one, first round draft picks or not, and not the pieces that can keep them in that upper echelon conversation, would be counterproductive to what the Sixers are trying to do.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think, like, truly, when I'm trying to picture this hypothetical, it's like a scorched earth scenario. Like, you're walking through Philadelphia and, you're on the lookout for zombies, and you've got your food in your backpack, and you're worried of everything around the corner, and the Sixers have no choice but to truly be future oriented. That's not the world they are in right now. They are indeed very much present oriented. Daryl Morris did acknowledge he's trying to also think about the future, and there's this intriguing element of what are the Sixers going to do next offseason and all of that. But to me, none of that is pertinent to this specific discussion. So, I think, we're not living in a world, where the zombies are roaming right now. Joel Embiid is a Sixer. Seems like that's going to be the case for, at a bare minimum the next year. And we will see what the future holds.
And he's such a beacon across the league of Sixers success, the way they were able to, pick him up when other teams were down on him. Okay, he was a number 3 overall pick, but he should have been number 1 considering. And the Sixers were able to navigate that and successfully bring him in the fold to be what he is now. And Grant Williams on the Run Your Race podcast title.
Theo Pinson on that. Yep.
He backhand complimented Joel by saying how versatile and skilled and amazing he is with the basketball and how many things he could do on the court. That was after he outlined the fact that Joel stepping on his head kind of really took him to a certain place. Like, man, I can't believe this dude is just, he fell on me a bunch during the series, and he just has a tendency to fall a whole lot, and also adding to the speculation that these new flopping rules might impact the way Joel Embiid plays. I'm honestly, coming from a guy who got his head stepped on, I think the only thing that turned me off or made me feel some type of way is when they agreed that he was 320 pounds or something like that. I was like, whoa, like, wait a minute. He's not 320. But what did you make of that? And I thought it was pretty tame, considering that, I don't know how friendly I could be to someone who stepped on my head like that. But
yeah, I mean, I think Grant Williams gave all the appropriate props to Joel Embiid's immense skill level and exaggerated the immense size level slightly. But yeah, I think you could hear that he was genuinely grateful upon seeing that play again, that he made it out, with his consciousness intact and his bearings and all of that. Yeah, I mean, just a wild moment. And look, like it's entirely valid that Joel Embiid falls a lot more than anyone else in the NBA.
But is intentional, right?
It is intentional, yeah. As Chris Herring had a great feature a while back, that it's with the notion, that it cushions injury, potential injury plays, and, ideally allows him to avoid anything catastrophic in that regard. But there is the flip side that teammates and opponents alike sometimes.
Yeah, it's not common knowledge. Like, that's not something everybody knows and understands about how he falls and why he falls.
Definitely. Yeah. And, even I think if you are aware of it, fair enough. If you're a little bit ticked off that the consequences of that are you getting 280 pounds of, a leg on your head or whatever. And, just the bottom line is there's a lot of cost benefit that Joel Embiid has to weigh in terms of how he approaches the game. I mean, there have been instances where his hustle has got him in uncomfortable positions that it led to injury, like was really hustling and, trying to chase down Cam Johnson. And that's what led to the knee injury this postseason. And then last postseason, his fall into Danny Green and Game 7, or I guess 2 postseasons ago, they all blend together a little, but, it's I think just inherently very tough if you're that big to figure all that out. But Joel Embiid, to his credit, has been thoughtful about what's ideal and doesn't always work out perfectly for him or for the people who happen to be in his general vicinity. So yeah, Grant Williams, I think, was for the most part pretty chill and lighthearted about that, but totally understandable that that specific play would stick in his mind as one that he narrowly escaped something even worse. And yeah, getting stepped on the head, I think, is not something you expect when you step onto the court.
And in Embiid's defense with the falling and why he does it and all of that, let's not forget the navicular bone injury that has ended many a big man's career. Yao Ming and Zydrunas Ilgauskas come to mind immediately, has hampered their careers, slowed their careers, shortened their careers. So the fact that he's able to be an MVP, 2-time runner-up, scoring champ, and all that in this span of having that injury and dealing with it is worth noting and worth adding to the conversation.
I think so too. Yeah, I mean, and just even the basic fact, like, missed the first 2 years of his NBA career and as he talked about at length when he accepted the MVP trophy, was in a bad, dark place personally, and had lost his brother before he played in an NBA game, and was trying to figure out who he was in the world and what his identity was, and didn't have basketball as an anchor and had these frustrating setbacks. So just the physical side of it, in addition to all of that, it is borderline miraculous that he has become an MVP.
Yeah, and that's not hyperbole. That's
no, like it truly is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he said, something very similar to the Kevin Garnett line about like nothing's really that impossible, and and I'm evidence of that. So yeah, clearly, very blessed, very talented, but also came from a place where none of the accomplishments that he's racked up really seemed at all on the table. I mean, people were wondering, was he ever going to be able to play NBA basketball? So
yeah, and then the college injury, missed the whole NCAA tournament, and which I wasn't aware of until after the Sixers drafted him. The high school stuff where he barely was latching onto the game, and that classic fast break, where he like tries to jump and dunk it, but ends up being out of bounds thing. Like I hadn't seen that until after the Sixers drafted him. So just the arc is very remarkable, miraculous, great word, but yeah, interesting. And Ben Barry adding that the fact that Grant Williams also said on the Old Man in the Three podcast that the Celtics game plan was to have the Sixers run because of Embiid's conditioning, and maybe Embiid wouldn't even fit on the Miami Heat because of the fat and conditioning tests that they have to body fat percentage and conditioning tests. Body fat, you said body fat. But what do you make of that? Any idea you think Embiid would have to slim down to a point where he could kind of fit that Heat bar of the conditioning and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think totally logical for the Celtics to want to play at a quick pace. I think most talented offensive teams who aim to get up a lot of threes embrace that philosophy. And of course, the Sixers' number 2 star was not the kind of guy who loves an up and down game in James Harden. So it makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think with the Heat, that's always a thing that's naturally raised with any player who's had previous conditioning issues. To me, Joel Embiid's gotten into a really strong place there, and we don't see a lot of the issues that popped up often earlier in his career where he was noticeably lethargic in fourth quarters, and if he'd miss a game or two with a minor injury, it would set back his fitness at this extreme level. But sure, I mean, I think in Miami, there is a huge emphasis on conditioning, and there are no shortcuts there, and there are no exceptions. Everyone has to do it. I mean, we saw with Kyle Lowry, heading into this past season, he had to rededicate himself in that regard, even in his late 30s. So, yeah, if Joel Embiid were in some wild world that we imagine, to end up on the Heat, perhaps he would, have 2% less body fat. That seems maybe a reasonable call. But to me, like, that is not at all like a large problem with his game or anything along those lines. I think he's actually done exceptionally well the past 3-ish years in that regard. It was certainly problematic in the 2019 playoffs. And then I think from that point on, he's been in a pretty good place.
Ben Barry always starting stuff, man. Thank you, Noah, for setting them straight. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Put your phone down, Ben. Don't text us. We don't want to hear it. But no, what do you I'm number one. Ben said it. I'm number one. What do you make of the flopping point Grant Williams made? Because there's a new rule in the league. It doesn't count against your personal fouls, but you will get a tech for flopping violation. That $5,000 fine thing didn't work. But what do you make of that? Because I don't think what necessarily happened with him falling on Grant Williams reflects the flopping foul, but Embiid does embellish at times, and we know that's part of his game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a plus that it doesn't count against, as you said, like personal fouls, and then even toward what would, team fouls,
Right.
or even what would lead to you being ejected.
Right,
So
right,
it's not like if you had 3 flops in a game,
you're out
or
of
2
here.
flops, you're ejected. So I like that because I imagine there will be a lot of gray area and there will be a lot of controversial flops.
Sure.
And
they got to do something though, because it's
getting
to a point.
I like that they're at least going a little bit further. I think that's a plus, and I think it's understandable that players try to embellish calls because
Grant Williams does it too. So I mean,
sure.
I'm sure we can name 1,000 people, but the fact that he's trying to criticize Joel by saying, "Oh, the flopping is going to affect his game," when he also,
I mean, my sense is it won't dramatically affect Joel Embiid's game, but sure, like wouldn't shock me if there's a game or two where he's called for a pivotal flopping call and he's furious because he thought there was contact, and there's heated debate about, well, was that contact enough for him to, throw his head back like he did? So I don't think those debates will be especially fun to have, but I think the flip side is, it's totally sensible to try to be a little harsher on flopping and try to see a little bit less of it in the game. So I think it's a nice step to take, and they'll reevaluate it after the year, see how it goes.
I hate to bring those judgment calls into the game like that, because obviously there's room for human error and all that, and the referees have a hard enough job as it is trying to curtail all this going on. But you got guys who are the defensive players of the year, like Marcus Smart, who's flops uncontrollably sometimes, or tough to watch sometimes when you're in a game and the referees don't see it, or Kyle Lowry, like you mentioned. But they had to do something.
I think there would have been issues with whatever approach they take, but this strikes me as a decent one. And I like the willingness to go outside the box a little with these solutions. And I do like as well that it is not something you can challenge. That feels like it would elevate the absurdity a little too much.
Yes.
Like, just the official gets to call it, and it's not something that coaches have the right to, ask for a review on just because they didn't like, the way that a player reacted to a little bit of contact or whatever. And along those lines, I do like as well that coaches, if they get their challenge right, they now have the right to a second one.
Yeah.
I would like it even a little further. I do like how they do it in the NFL, where it's basically about
get rewarded with another.
Just like if you keep getting them right, I don't see why you should run out of them. It seems like it's the official's fault if they're getting the calls wrong. I guess the counter to that is just you don't want to slow the game down too much, and you don't want to make challenges too central to the game. But I think if you've already introduced challenges, then they're kind of there to stay, it seems. And therefore, I don't like the idea that just because officials are getting multiple calls wrong, that you're out of luck on being capable of challenging a pivotal call in a game. So, same idea. I think it's moving in the right direction, and I would like it. I would like it a little further. I feel like the whole point is to get the calls right, ensure the enforcement of that, and the judgment calls aren't always perfect, even when they go to video review, arguably. But I think
10 eyeballs staring at it, and everybody still gets it wrong. But
they are getting more calls right in those situations because they're actually being able to see at least the obvious things they get wrong, right? Like when someone steps out of bounds or whatever. So I think coaches that challenge well, I empathize with them being frustrated when they don't have, further ability to challenge incorrect calls. But now they at least have a little more of that ability, which is good, I think.
You know what it makes me think of, Noah? When for those few years, the NFL just had no instant replay whatsoever. Like you couldn't challenge there was no challenges, and there was no instant replay to even overturn anything. So, like you said, I hope it's here to stay. So, let's pay some bills, though. We have another topic or two to get to, but of course, we are very proud of our sponsors, and they continue to help us have a incredible show and bring you all of the Sixers information. Wilmington University, our biggest sponsor, title sponsor. Wilmington University and students are in the game, upskill in fields like cybersecurity, fintech, healthcare, and education, in person or online. Get in the game at Wilmington University. Find us at wilmu.edu. It's time to rush to new rewards at Rivers Casino. Now there's a whole new way for you to earn, redeem, and level up your rewards. Get your new Rush Rewards card and get more out of your game at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, here we are back on the Sixers Talk podcast. And, we have talked about a lot of things, and we touched on previously the fact that I felt like Tyrese Maxey was someone who was left off of the World Cup consideration for Team USA. But Ben Berry, one of our podcast producer, gave us the idea of comparing Tyrese Maxey and Tyler Herro as far as it goes regarding their potential, how they compare to each other, who would you rather have? And they were both in Dame Lillard trade talks, he said. So I would think that having Maxey in a Portland Trailblazers uniform would be more appealing to that fan base because of his potential, not only as a scorer, but to be a better defender, where I feel like Herro is probably maxed out in that category. I don't know how much more he's going to. I don't think he's going to be a better defender, flat out. I just no need to tiptoe around it. I just think Maxey can probably get to a point where you're very happy having him on the floor on both ends. Although I might give Herro the edge as it goes as far as his offensive prowess that can continue to grow. And I'm just kind of being generous there, I think, because the numbers probably say they're comparable shooters. But where are you on that? And do you feel like as a Trailblazers front office member, you would rather have one or the other?
I'd be very clear on Tyrese Maxey there. I mean, there's just the basic level of the contractual stuff, and Maxey being a guy who's, an extreme bargain because the Sixers have not yet extended him. He's going to play next year on a 4th-year option that's under $3 million, whereas Tyler Herro just got the 4-year, $120 million extension. And I mean, I think in terms of the level they're at right now, there are certainly, valid subcategories that you could quibble with. I think Maxey is the better shooter. I think he's one of the best shooters in the NBA right now. He was over 43% from long range, and those were not all super easy shots. Exceptional catch and shoot player, and has developed the deep range and the step back game, and just made remarkable progress in that area to the point where he's downright elite.
And no significant injuries either.
That's a plus. Yeah, I guess last year was his most significant in the NBA. Lost a few weeks there, but has been a durable guy and always brings, great energy when he's on the court as well. I think I agree with your point that currently he's a better defensive player, gets picked on less than Tyler Herro. And I think it's a little deceiving that Herro is, 3-4 inches taller, because Herro has the negative wingspan, whereas Tyrese Maxey actually has, the 6'6" wingspan, which I think enables him to hold his own a little bit on guys who are not just point guards. I think he's perfectly fine against many shooting guards, and probably has underrated physical strength as well. Is really solid strength-wise for his age. He's a couple years younger. I think, sure, like Tyrese Maxey has been in arguably a fantastic situation to accentuate his talents. James Harden's gotten him a bunch of wide open threes. Joel Embiid draws all those double teams, but I think a lot of Maxey's game, like regardless of the setting, I'd be very confident that he's going to be a very good player. I think like much of the same can be said for Herro, but if you're asking from a front office perspective, I don't think that would be a close call. I think if you're trying to decide like who is the better player right now, or who would you want on X or Y team right now, kind of removing all of that other context, then maybe it's a little bit closer. But I mean, I think it's fair enough to say that Tyrese Maxey is just so full of potential and already so good that he would, in my view, be the clear answer here. Yeah.
Herro, 20 points per game, 20.1 points per game, I should say.
Better passer, I think, like 5-6 assists per game.
5.4 rebounds, 4.2 assists.
Yep.
43% from the floor, 37.8 from three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tyrese Maxey, I think obviously hasn't been,
opportunities.
hasn't been able to tap into the passing a lot. James Harden is a ball dominant guy.
Right.
I think Maxey, it's not as natural to him as the scoring, but does naturally have that turnover averse style. So even if, in terms of his growth, he doesn't develop a ton of advanced passing reads being in his wheelhouse, I think you can be comfortable that he's not going to cost your team possessions. He's going to be a savvy, smart player. And I do still see flashes of promise that he can grow a few more levels, with his playmaking, in part just because he puts so much pressure on the defense when he gets downhill. And many of those passes, frankly, aren't especially difficult for him. Like, he sucks in the defense, draws 2 or 3 defenders. Those are not the hardest reads. So I don't think it's absolutely essential that he, becomes this virtuoso passer in order for him to become an all-star. I think there are many other paths for him to do that. And don't mean to disrespect Herro at all. I think perhaps he is viewed a little, negatively by some front offices just in light of not wanting to take that contract on and all those years and all that money. But I think Tyrese Maxey is he's still 21 years old. And we are talking about a player who very well could be an all-star next season.
Are we overlooking fit as far as this conversation goes, considering they just drafted Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, added Maxey to that might not make as much sense as adding Tyler Herro?
How so? Why do you
think? Just they have other guys who are already constitute the backcourt. You know what I'm saying? Where Tyler Herro might be maybe more of a 2-3 guy. Maybe they could put him.
I mean, I just guessed my earlier point. I don't see Herro as being a guy you'd like to guard threes because he has, 6'3" wingspan or something, and there is a track record of he gets picked on some defensively. Not an effort thing, just he doesn't have great defensive tools, and the lack of length is one of those reasons. But sure, I think for Portland, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Anthony Simons and whether he is a long-term piece there. But I think my assumption is they're just trying to accumulate talent right now. Tyrese Maxey is really talented, and therefore he's a player that a lot of teams who are looking to build young cores would see as fitting in quite nicely there. Of course, that doesn't mean the Sixers are inclined to, make that happen elsewhere. All accounts are
he's off the board.
They love him here, and that's the notion, that they've projected, and totally understandable that they see big things for him down the line.
Eagles training camp starts tomorrow, Noah. I'm sure this will be a great time for you to plug anything on the website so that people can know about it before all of the inundation of Eagles story after story after story. What's going on the website? Anything on the horizon?
Yeah, probably tomorrow we'll just have a look at the Sixers depth chart, and analyzing some of the strengths and weaknesses as things stand right now, and how the team compares to last year and things along those lines. So that is the next piece on the horizon on NBC Sports Philadelphia. And
I say start, I mean the guys report tomorrow, so all the speculation and
still a lot of birds buzz.
Oh my gosh,
inevitably,
absolutely. Before we go, we teased at the beginning of the podcast because Ben Barry had a great idea of players that were drafted number 1 overall that won a championship with the team that drafted them. How many players did that? This is going back to 1957 because that's where we wanted to cap it at, because past there will probably be a little overkill. But Noah got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar right off the top, Lou Alcindor. I said LeBron. There's Kyrie, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon. So in all, 13 guys here since 1957. Elgin Baylor and Bill Bradley, 2 I would not have gotten. But Magic, Michael Thompson, I probably wouldn't have gotten that one either. But Hakeem, James Worthy, Bill Walton, pretty easy. I mean, Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer. So, or potential.
13's a little higher than I expected. I guess we tend to blow up the number 1 or high picks that are bust, but those guys, brought championships to their teams. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show the odds are not in your favor. And I think I saw a story just to coincide with that if you put all of the players since the start of Major League Baseball that were drafted into the league or played in the league into a stadium, it wouldn't even fill the whole stadium up. It's just rarefied air to be a professional athlete or even be at that level where you can be included in that group. So we always don't take for granted the privilege we have of covering these elite athletes and being able to be so close and to bring you the stories that surround them. But we appreciate you listening to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. For Ben Berry and Noah Levick, I'm Danny Pommells. We'll see you next time.